abandoned to die in the delivery room. Now the Mafia is after me and won't let Geo. The night was thick and cold over the kingdom of Valesing. Storm clouds gathered above the tall spires of the palace, swallowing the light of the moon and stars. Inside, the corridors were quiet, almost too quiet, as if the entire palace were holding its breath. In a hidden chamber, lit only by a few flickering candles, Seraphine Vale lay on a cold stone bed, her body trembling with pain and fear. No one had come for her. No hand reached out to help her. She had been abandoned, left alone to face a fate that should have claimed her long ago. The midwives who were supposed to be at her side had left when the rumors of her cursed child spread. The priests had whispered that the gods themselves had turned away. And yet she lived. She breathed through the pain, the anguish, and the terror that gripped her heart like icy chains. Seraphine's mind wandered to the life she had known before this night. Born to a minor noble family, she had always been told that her destiny would be simple, quiet, safe. But destiny had other plans. The child growing inside her had been conceived in secrecy, a forbidden union that no one could understand. Now, as she struggled to survive the labor alone, the palace seemed like a distant world, a place where she had never truly belonged. The candles flickered as another wave of pain swept through her. She gritted her teeth, refusing to cry out. Tears streamed down her face, hot and helpless, mingling with the sweat on her brow. Outside, the wind howled like a beast, rattling the heavy doors of the chamber. And in that howling silence she felt a presence, something unseen, watching her from the shadows. It was then that she understood. She was not entirely alone. A sudden crack of lightning illuminated the room. For a moment she saw a figure standing in the corner, a shadow of a man, or perhaps a spirit, wrapped in a long cloak that seemed to absorb the light. His eyes glimmered not with warmth but with a strange, magnetic intensity. He did not move, yet she felt his gaze like fire on her skin. Seraphine's heart raced. Was this a ghost, a messenger from the gods, or something far darker? She did not have the strength to rise, nor the courage to call out. She only breathed, each breath a labor, each heartbeat a drum of warning in the silent chamber. And then it happened. The child emerged, crying into the cold darkness. Seraphine's arms shook as she tried to hold the tiny body, but the child was pulled from her grasp as if invisible hands had taken it. The shadows in the room twisted, forming shapes she could not name. A deep, resonant voice, not spoken aloud but echoing in her mind, whispered words she could not understand. Her child was gone before the first breath of dawn. Seraphine fell back onto the stone bed, gasping, weeping, and broken. She felt the magic of the place, the same magic that had cursed her perhaps, or saved her, circling her like a cold wind. Her body ached, her mind reeled, and yet she survived. Somehow, the night had chosen to keep her alive. The storm outside broke, and rain pelted the stone roof. Each drop sounded like a drumbeat, marking the passage of time. Seraphine tried to rise but could barely move. She crawled toward the door, seeking escape from the chamber that had become a tomb. Her fingers touched the cold handle, and for a moment hope flickered. Perhaps she could flee, leave this palace, leave the life that had abandoned her. But the world beyond was not kind. The kingdom of Valesing was ruled by power, secrecy, and shadows. And far from the palace, hidden in the city's deepest alleys and secret towers, the Black Covenant stirred. The Black Covenant was no ordinary group. They were rulers behind rulers, kings behind kings, masters of debts written in blood and shadows. When they sensed the child's magic, when they felt the tremor of life in the abandoned chamber, they knew. Seraphine Vale was no ordinary mother. She carried within her blood the key to a prophecy, one that could change the kingdom forever, and they would not let her go. Hours passed. The storm outside eased, leaving the city washed and silent. Seraphine moved step by painful step through hidden corridors and forgotten halls. She had no plan, no direction, only a single goal: to survive. Each corner held danger, each shadow could hide enemies. But something deeper pushed her forward, the instinct to live, to reclaim a future snatched from her by cruel fate. She reached a hidden passage, one she had learned of only as a child, whispered about in old stories. The passage led into the wilderness, far from the palace, far from anyone who could see her. Seraphine took her first steps into the night air, cold and free. The moon peeked from behind clouds, casting silver light on her face. She could hear the distant river, the rustle of leaves, the whisper of a world beyond the palace walls. And yet, even in that freedom, fear clung to her like a shadow. Somewhere she felt it, a presence that would not let her escape. The covenant would come. They always came for what they wanted, and they had already chosen her. She stumbled into the forest, exhausted and hungry, her wounds raw, her soul rawer. She found a small hollow among the roots of an ancient tree and collapsed, wrapping herself around her aching body. Sleep claimed her briefly, but her dreams were not kind. In them, she saw the child again, small and crying, lost in a labyrinth of shadows. She tried to reach the child, but every step pulled her backward. Every hand she extended grasped only empty air. When she awoke, the forest was bathed in the pale light of dawn. Birds called in the distance, their songs indifferent to her suffering. But the mark of the night remained, a strange, burning sigil on her wrist, faint but undeniable. It pulsed with energy, a reminder that the covenant had not released her, that the prophecy had not forgotten her. Seraphine rose, weak but determined. She did not know what lay ahead, who would hunt her, or how she would survive. But she knew this: she was not the same woman who had entered the palace. She had been broken, abandoned, and left to die. And yet she lived. Somewhere in the shadows of Valesine, the Black Covenant watched. Somewhere her child was alive, hidden, and their fate intertwined with hers. Somewhere a force older than the kingdom waited, knowing that the moment of reckoning was approaching. Seraphine took her first step into the unknown, her body trembling, her heart burning, her soul alight with a quiet fire. She did not know how to fight what was coming. She only knew she would not run anymore. And in that quiet, empty forest, a voice, not spoken aloud but felt deep in her mind, whispered, carrying a promise and a threat. "You cannot hide. You cannot escape. We will find you, and you will not be free." Seraphine's fingers tightened over the hem of her cloak. The prophecy, the child, the covenant, all of it was now her world. She would face it. She would survive it. And somehow she would reclaim what was taken from her. The wind rose again, rustling the leaves above. The forest seemed alive with secrets, with dangers, with unseen eyes. Seraphine stepped forward, every movement a promise, every breath a declaration. She was not abandoned. She was not defeated. She was alive, and the night itself would remember her name. And so the journey began. Years had passed since Seraphine Vale had escaped the palace that had tried to abandon her. Time had hardened her body and sharpened her instincts. She had learned to survive alone in the wild lands beyond Valesine, moving like a shadow through forests, crossing mountains, and hiding in villages that did not know her name. She wore simple cloaks, kept her hair tied back, and never lingered long in one place. Yet even in her solitude, the mark of that long-ago night remained. The faint sigil on her wrist pulsed quietly, reminding her that she had never truly escaped. Somewhere far beyond the trees and hills, the Black Covenant still watched, still waited, still claimed her by rights she had never accepted. Seraphine had almost convinced herself that the world had forgotten her. She had convinced herself that the child, her child, was gone. Lost to the shadows forever. She told herself that she had survived, and that was enough. But the forest is not always quiet. On a cold morning, mist rolling across the valleys like a pale river, she felt it again, a presence stronger than any before. It did not move like the wind or whisper like the trees. It approached with certainty, power, and intent. Seraphine froze, sensing rather than seeing the intruder. A tall figure stepped from the fog, clad in a long black coat that shimmered faintly in the morning light. His eyes were dark, almost too dark, yet they seemed to see every secret she had buried in the years of her hiding. This was no ordinary man. This was someone shaped by shadows, someone who belonged to the very world she had tried to avoid. "Seraphine Vale," he said, his voice calm, but it carried the weight of command. "You cannot hide from what is yours." Seraphine's heart clenched. She knew the voice, though she had never heard it before. It belonged to Lord Caelan Moreth, the Shadow Lord of the Black Covenant. The very man who, she realized with a surge of dread, had been sent to claim her years ago. "I am no one now," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I belong to no one. Leave me be." Caelan did not move closer. He did not raise his hand. He only studied her, and in his gaze she felt the strange pull of fear and something else, something she could not name. "You survive because you are stronger than they know," he said, "and because you must. The child is alive, and you are bound to me whether you like it or not." The words hit her like ice water. Alive, bound. Questions surged in her mind faster than she could answer. How could the child be alive? How could she be bound to a man she had never met? And what power did he, or the Covenant, think they could claim from her? "You speak in riddles," she said, backing away. "I am no one's pawn. I will not serve you or your Covenant." Caelan's expression did not change, but there was a flicker of something behind his eyes. "You survived the night you were meant to die," he said. "And that survival marks you. The Covenant does not forget. You are the key to a prophecy that cannot be ignored." Seraphine's pulse raced. Prophecy. Magic. Blood. Her life had always been ordinary in her own mind until the night in the chamber had shattered everything. Now, even in her freedom, the past had reached her again. "I have lived without your Covenant," she said. "I have survived without them. I am free." Caelan's gaze softened ever so slightly, but the shadow of authority never left his posture. "Freedom is an illusion when the world decides for you," he said. "They will come for you, Seraphine. They have already begun to move, and they will not stop until what they desire is in their hands." Her stomach twisted. She had run for years, crossed forests and rivers, fought hunger and illness, and now it seemed all of that was meaningless. The Covenant's eyes were on her again. She was being pulled back into the darkness she had spent years avoiding. "I will not go with you," she whispered, almost to herself. "You do not have a choice," Caelan said, stepping closer. His voice, though calm, carried power and danger. "But I will not hurt you. Not yet. You survive, yes, but survival alone will not protect you. You need me." Seraphine's chest tightened. Need him? How could she need the man who represented the shadow of a group that had tried to claim her child? How could she trust someone whose very presence reminded her of chains, threats, and stolen moments? And yet, something in his eyes told her a truth she could not ignore. He was not entirely her enemy. Something inside him resisted the Covenant as much as she did. "You cannot control me," she said, her voice shaking, but with a spark of defiance. "I do not wish to control you," Caelan replied. "I wish to protect you. I wish to guide you. And yes, to claim what has always belonged to you. But you must understand, what is coming will demand more than survival." The air between them grew thick with tension. Seraphine felt it deep in her chest, the pulse of something unspoken, a connection forged not in love, but in shared purpose and inevitable conflict. She did not understand why, but she felt the pull of his presence like gravity, like a current beneath calm water. Before she could respond, a sound shattered the stillness, a cry from the trees, a warning of danger. Both Seraphine and Caelan instinctively moved toward the sound, their bodies poised. Figures emerged from the fog, masked agents of the Black Covenant, cloaked in black, moving silently and swiftly. Seraphine's heart froze. She was outnumbered but not unprepared. Years of survival had taught her to fight, to run, to hide. But these were not ordinary enemies. They were hunters trained to capture, to bring her to the Covenant. And Kaelan, the Shadow Lord, was one of them, yet here he was, standing by her side, his own presence a shield against the others. "Stay close," he whispered. "Do not speak. Do not fight unless I say." They moved together through the mist, silent and swift, weaving through trees and shadows. Seraphine could feel his power, not just in the strength of his body, but in the command he carried over the world around them. The forest seemed to bend to him, the fog parting, the wind whispering warnings to him alone. As they ran, Seraphine's mind raced. How had her life led her to this moment, running through mist and trees with the very man who represented everything she feared and hated? And yet, why did she not want to flee from him as she fled from everything else? Hours passed. The morning sun began to pierce the fog, turning it into a pale, silver haze. They emerged into a clearing where an abandoned stone chapel stood, crumbling but strong, untouched by time. Kaelin guided her inside, sealing the doors and drawing a protective ward around them. A simple magic, old but powerful, enough to hide them from immediate detection. "You are safe here," he said, finally allowing himself to breathe. For now. Seraphine sank to the floor, exhausted, trembling from the run, from the fear, from the closeness of a man she did not trust but could not ignore. "Safe," she repeated. I do not know if that word exists for me anymore." Kaelin knelt beside her, his dark eyes meeting hers. "It exists," he said softly. "It exists for those who fight for it, who do not give up. And you, Seraphine Vale, are not one to give up. That is why you have survived all these years." For a long moment they sat in silence, the tension between them heavy but unspoken. Seraphine realized something she had not allowed herself to feel in years, a fragile, trembling hope. Not hope for freedom, not yet. Not hope for reunion with her child, but hope that she could survive this new danger, that she might live to fight another day. And then Kaelin spoke again, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The child is alive," he said. "They are growing, being trained, being shaped by forces you do not yet understand. And you are the only one who can bring them back." Her breath caught. The child alive. Somewhere still growing, still hers, still waiting. And yet the thought of facing the Covenant again, the thought of facing the Shadow Lord who was part enemy, part ally, part mystery, it terrified her. "You will not leave me alone in this," she said, her voice trembling. "You will not take me to them, not yet." "I will not take you," Kaelin replied. "I will walk with you, and if you survive, we may find a way to reclaim what has been lost. But you must be ready, Seraphine. Ready for what comes, ready for the choice you may have to make, ready to face the darkness that waits for us both." The wind moaned through the broken windows of the chapel. The fog outside clung to the stones like ghosts. And in the silence that followed, Seraphine realized that her life had changed forever. The years of hiding, of running, of surviving alone had ended. The Covenant was hunting her, the prophecy demanded her, and the Shadow Lord, mysterious, dangerous, and compelling, was now her companion in a world she no longer understood. And as she looked at him, she could not deny the truth that began to rise in her heart, however reluctantly. This man, this shadow of the Covenant, was bound to her fate, and she was bound to his. The journey ahead would be perilous. It would test her strength, her courage, her heart. And the child she had lost, the child she must reclaim, was waiting in a world where darkness had already claimed too much. And somewhere in the depths of the city, the Black Covenant stirred once more, sensing that the hunt had begun in earnest. The chase was not over. It would never end until the prophecy was fulfilled or destroyed. And Seraphine Vale, once abandoned, once left to die, was no longer alone. The ruins of the old city stretched before Seraphine like a forgotten kingdom. Walls that had once held life now stood cracked and moss-covered, silent witnesses to time's relentless passage. She walked beside Kaelin Morith, the Shadow Lord who had claimed her by fate, not by choice. His presence was both a comfort and a threat, a reminder of the power she could neither deny nor fully trust. For years, Seraphine had survived alone. She had lived by her instincts, moving through forests, rivers, and mountains, avoiding men and magic alike. But now, with Kaelin at her side, the world had changed. She was no longer just surviving. She was hunted, desired, and bound to a prophecy that demanded more than courage. It demanded power she had never known she possessed. "We cannot stay here," Kaelin said, his voice low and serious. "The Covenant knows we moved. They will send hunters, more than we can fight alone." Seraphine nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. The ruins whispered to her, carrying echoes of queens long past, women who had ruled with wisdom and magic before being erased from history. She could feel their presence, a subtle pulse in her blood, urging her to awaken what had been dormant for generations. "I can feel them," she whispered, almost to herself. "The queens, the ones who came before me, they are part of me." Kaelin glanced at her, dark eyes narrowing. "You have power you do not yet understand," he said. "It is tied to the child, tied to the prophecy. But awakening it will not be easy, and it will draw the Covenant even closer." Seraphine clenched her fists. She had survived abandonment, storms, hunger, and fear. She would not be a pawn any longer. "I do not care," she said. "I will reclaim what is mine, no matter the cost." For the first time, Kaelin's expression softened, not entirely, but enough for her to see the man behind the shadow. "And you will not be alone," he said. "I will stand with you, but you must trust me." She looked at him, the man who was part ally, part danger. She did not know if she could trust him completely, but something inside her, a flicker of hope, of connection, told her that she had no choice. The first sign of danger came with the wind. It shifted suddenly, carrying a chill that was not natural. The birds fell silent, the leaves stilled, and a feeling of being watched pressed against her skin like icy fingers. "They are coming," Kaelin said. "We need to move now." Together they ran through the ruins, shadows among shadows. Seraphine's heart pounded, her body aching from the years of survival that had left her strong but cautious. Yet even as fear surged through her, there was another feeling rising, a strange, unspoken bond with Kaelin. He moved with her, protected her, and yet did not control her. She noticed how he watched her when she did not expect it, how he acted before danger arrived. He was dangerous, yes, but he was also her shield. As they reached the edge of the ruins, a small, hidden courtyard appeared, covered in vines and overgrown grass. Here, Kaelin paused, turning to face her. "You must learn to control your power," he said. "The Queen's magic is within you, but it will not awaken on its own. The Covenant seeks it, they want to use it for their own ends. If we are to survive, you must master it first." Seraphine swallowed hard. "I don't even know where to begin." "You begin by believing," Kaelin replied, "by trusting yourself, and by letting go of the fear that has held you captive all these years." The lesson began that very night. Under the pale light of the moon, Kaelin guided her through the ruins, helping her call forth the magic that slept within her. At first, nothing happened. She grew frustrated, her fingers trembling, her breath ragged. But then she felt it. A surge of energy, warm and bright, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, coursed through her veins. The ruins responded. Stones shifted slightly, the wind whispered, and faint images of queens appeared in the shadows, guiding her hands, teaching her to bend the magic with intent. Kaelin watched, silently amazed. He had seen many gifted individuals, but Seraphine's power was rare, ancient, and tied to bloodlines thought lost. And yet, even as he admired her, he felt the weight of what was coming: the child, the prophecy, and the inevitable confrontation with the Covenant. Hours passed. Seraphine collapsed, exhausted but alive, her mind racing with the realization that she was more than she had ever known. Kaelin knelt beside her, offering a hand. She hesitated, then took it, feeling a warmth that went beyond magic or protection, a connection that was growing despite themselves. "You have done well," he said quietly, "but the path ahead is far more dangerous." Before she could respond, The sound of distant footsteps shattered the night's quiet. Shadows moved along the ruin's edge, agents of the Covenant, faster and more numerous than they had anticipated. Seraphine's chest tightened. She had thought she had gained some measure of control over her destiny, but the world reminded her that freedom was never given. It was taken, fought for, and defended. Kaelin's eyes darkened. We must fight, but we must be careful. They are not here to kill us, they are here to capture you, to claim what belongs to them. Together they prepared. Seraphine's magic surged beneath her skin, a current of light and power she could barely contain. Kaelin drew his own strength from the shadows around him, blending stealth with skill, strategy with instinct. The agents attacked suddenly, emerging from the mist in a coordinated strike. Seraphine's heart raced as she unleashed a wave of energy, sending them sprawling. Kaelin moved with lethal precision, striking before the enemy could react. Together they fought, not as master and pawn, but as allies, strangers bound by fate, power, and the unspoken thread of trust that was beginning to form between them. Even in the heat of battle, Seraphine noticed something strange. Kaelin did not look at her as a weapon, nor as a tool. He looked at her as a person, strong, capable, and deserving of more than fear and control. And in that fleeting moment, something inside her softened. The agents fell back, regrouping. Seraphine's pulse pounded, sweat slick on her skin, but she felt alive. She had faced danger and survived, not alone, but together with someone who, despite everything, had become a part of her fight. Kaelin extended his hand. We cannot stay here. The Covenant will return in greater numbers. We must move. She took his hand, gripping it firmly. I am ready, she said. Not fully ready, not completely, but ready enough to face what was coming. They moved through hidden paths, the ruins giving way to forests and hills. The night seemed to close around them, the darkness pressing closer, yet neither hesitated. They had survived betrayal, abandonment, and danger, and they would survive this. As dawn broke, painting the sky with pale gold and pink, they reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley. Below, the city of Valesin stretched out, unaware of the prophecy unfolding above it. Seraphine's heart ached with longing for her child, for freedom, for a life that might never be hers. You feel it, don't you? Kaelin asked softly. The pull of destiny, of magic, of what must be done, she nodded. I feel it, but it frightens me. I do not know if I am strong enough. You are, he said. You survived when they left you to die. You survived when the world turned against you. That strength, it is more than physical. It is courage and heart and fire, and it will see you through. For a long moment they stood in silence, the wind tugging at their cloaks, the valley below bathed in light. Seraphine realized she had come far, farther than she had ever thought possible. She was no longer a frightened girl left to die. She was a woman with power, purpose, and allies, strange though they might be. And yet the thought of the child lingered in her mind, a constant ache. Alive, somewhere alive, and shaped by the Covenant. She had to reach them before it was too late. As she prepared to speak, a shadow passed over the cliff. A figure, cloaked and masked, descended from the sky with unnatural grace. Seraphine froze. Kaelin's hand tightened around hers. The Covenant, he said grimly, and they bring a message. The figure landed silently before them, removing the mask. Seraphine's heart stopped. The child, but it was not her child yet. It was a messenger, a young figure trained in the ways of the Covenant, eyes cold and calculating. They held a scroll in their hand, a summons, a warning, a challenge. Kaelin's gaze hardened. They know where we are, he said, and they are ready to strike. Seraphine clenched the scroll in her hands. The journey ahead would not be easy. But for the first time, she did not feel powerless. Together, she and Kaelin faced the dawn, ready to fight, ready to reclaim what had been lost, ready to challenge the world that had tried to abandon her. And somewhere in the shadows of Valesin, the Covenant watched, waiting for the moment when the true battle would begin. The valley of Valesin lay bathed in silver moonlight as Seraphine Vale, and Kalen Morith prepared for the battle that would decide their fates. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and earth, whispering through the trees like the breath of forgotten queens. Every sound, every shadow seemed alive with anticipation. Seraphine's heart pounded, not with fear, though she felt plenty, but with determination. Years of survival had brought her here, but years of running could not prepare her for the moment she faced now. The Black Covenant, the shadowy syndicate that had haunted her since birth, had summoned their greatest warriors and dark magic to claim what they believed was theirs, the child she had lost, and the power flowing through her blood. Kalen stood beside her, a figure carved from shadow and purpose. He had grown more than a protector. He had become an ally, a companion, and though neither of them admitted it, someone she could rely on with her life. His eyes, usually guarded and cold, softened when they met hers, and for a fleeting moment the prophecy faded into the quiet promise of trust. "We cannot fail," Kalen whispered. "Not tonight. The child is out there waiting. And if the Covenant wins, everything we fought for, everything will be lost." Seraphine nodded. "Then we fight. Not as pawns, not as victims, but as those who choose their own destiny." Her voice was strong, steady, and full of the fire that had carried her from the chamber where she had been left to die, through years of exile, through fear and despair. The air trembled around them, a warning that the Covenant's forces were near. Figures emerged from the mist, cloaked, silent, and countless. Shadows seemed to ripple unnaturally with their movement, dark energy bending the moonlight into strange, threatening patterns. Seraphine felt her pulse quicken, but she did not falter. Kalen moved first, his long black coat flowing like smoke. Shadows responded to him, forming into blades and shields, a defensive power he wielded with skill honed over decades. Seraphine raised her hands, feeling the magic of the queens within her awaken fully. Light and wind swirled around her fingers, forming barriers and energy waves that pulsed with the heartbeat of the ancient rulers who lived in her blood. The first wave of the Covenant struck. Soldiers moved like ghosts, their movements precise and lethal, but they had underestimated her. Seraphine unleashed a surge of energy, knocking several to the ground. Kalen struck with calculated force, his shadows slicing through the enemy ranks. Together, they fought not just as allies, but as a force the Covenant had never expected. Even in the heat of battle, Seraphine could not ignore the pull in her heart, the thought of her child, hidden and perhaps manipulated, waiting in the hands of those who would use them as a weapon. The fear and love intertwined, giving her strength beyond anything she had known. Hours passed in a blur of motion, magic, and steel. The Covenant's forces were relentless, but Seraphine and Kalen held their ground, weaving between attack and defense, never faltering, never yielding. And as the battle raged, Seraphine felt the magic within her expand further, guided by the whispers of the queens. She was no longer just surviving. She was commanding, shaping, and reclaiming power that had been denied to her bloodline for centuries. Finally, as dawn's light began to touch the valley, the Covenant's forces faltered. Seraphine stood at the center of the clearing, glowing with power, a figure of light against the lingering shadows. Kalen stood close, shadows at his command, his presence a steady anchor amidst the chaos. Then came the moment she had feared and hoped for. The child appeared. Not fully trained, not fully aware of their own power, but alive. Their eyes met hers, wide with confusion, wonder, and fear. The child had grown strong, yes, but shaped by the Covenant's teachings, their heart a mixture of loyalty and longing, trust and doubt. "Mother," the child whispered, a voice trembling yet filled with recognition. Seraphine's knees nearly buckled. She rushed forward, embracing the child with a strength born of years of loss and longing. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I am here. I will never leave you again." Kalen watched, a quiet tension in his body. He had helped train, protect, and guide her to this moment, but the truth was clear. This reunion was hers, not his, and he would respect it, even as it changed the dynamics of their mission. The Covenant's remaining forces surged, desperate to reclaim their prize. Seraphine stood firm, holding the child close. Kaylin moved beside her, ready to defend them both with shadow and steel. And in that moment a bond was sealed, not just of blood and magic, but of choice, courage, and love that transcended fear. The final battle was intense. Seraphine and Kaylin fought in harmony, the child's small but growing magic adding to their defense. Waves of dark energy clashed with light, shadows struck against power, and the clearing became a place of epic struggle. Yet, even as exhaustion gripped them, neither faltered. And then, in the climactic moment, Kaylin made a choice. He stepped forward to sever the magical connection the Covenant had over the child. The act was dangerous, demanding every ounce of his strength and life force. For a tense heartbeat, it seemed he might be consumed by the shadows he controlled. "Kaylin," Seraphine cried, reaching for him, but he held her gaze, a quiet promise in his eyes. "Trust me, I will not let them take what is ours." With a final surge of shadow and light, the Covenant's hold shattered. The forces faltered and fled, leaving the mother, child, and Shadow Lord standing victorious. Exhausted, wounded, yet unbroken. Seraphine fell to her knees, holding the child close, tears of relief and joy falling freely. "We are together," she whispered. "No one can separate us again." Kaylin knelt beside them, his breathing heavy, but a small, rare smile crossing his face. "You have done what many could not," he said. "You reclaimed what was lost. You survived, you led, you fought." For a long moment, silence filled the valley. The storm of battle had passed. The morning sun broke fully over the horizon, bathing the scene in gold light. Seraphine stood, holding her child, feeling the pulse of magic within her, the legacy of the queens guiding her. "This is not just survival," she said softly. "It is life, it is freedom, and it is ours." Kaylin placed a hand gently on her shoulder, not controlling, not demanding, only sharing in the quiet triumph. "And it is only the beginning," he said. "The world will remember this day. The Covenant may rise again, others may try, but you, Mother, Queen, Survivor, will stand. And I will stand with you." For the first time in years, Seraphine allowed herself to feel peace. The danger was not gone, but the bonds she had formed, the power she now commanded, and the child she had reclaimed gave her hope stronger than any fear. She was no longer abandoned. She was no longer hunted. She was alive, and she had the power to shape her destiny. As they looked out over the valley, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the voices of queens past and the promise of a future they could create together. The child nestled in her arms, eyes bright and curious, already reaching for the magic within their own heart. Kaylin turned to Seraphine, shadows retreating from his form in the growing daylight. "You have changed everything," he said quietly. "Not just for yourself, but for the child, for the kingdom, for the world." Seraphine nodded. "And together we will protect it. Together we will face whatever comes next. We will not be broken again." A silence fell, comfortable and strong, as the sun rose higher. For the first time in a lifetime, Seraphine allowed herself to imagine a life beyond fear, beyond loss, beyond shadows. She had survived death, abandonment, and darkness. She had reclaimed her child, awakened her power, and forged bonds that would not easily be broken. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not because it demanded it, but because she had chosen it, fought for it, and embraced it. And in that choice, she found not just survival, but love, redemption, and hope. The winds of Valesing carried their names, whispered through the valleys, and etched into the hearts of those who would follow. Seraphine Vale, Mother, Queen without a throne, survivor of the impossible. Kaylin Morith, Shadow Lord turned protector, redeemed by courage and loyalty. And the child, the living heart of prophecy, free at last. And as the morning light settled over the valley, one truth was certain: the shadows could not destroy them. Not their hearts, not their will, not their bond. Together they had triumphed, and the world would never be the same.